Imagine inheriting a massive, centuries-old mansion. But when you finally get the keys, the roof is caved in, the foundation is crumbling, and the neighbors are actively throwing torches through the windows.
Yeah, and you're basically expected to rebuild it while standing, directly inside that fire.
Exactly. Welcome to this custom deep dive. Today, we're taking you back to 16th century Ethiopia to look at Emperor Gelawdewos. At 18 years old, he inherited a completely shattered empire. He had to navigate a traumatized populace, global proxy wars, and massive demographic shifts just to survive. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the baseline context you need here is total state collapse. Just before his reign, Imam Ahmad of the Edel Sultanate launched the Future al-Habasha, or conquest of Abyssinia.
Right, which just systematically decimated the Christian highlands.
It did.
Yeah.
So when Gelawdewos took the throne in 1540, the Solomonic state was totally dismantled. I mean, this was the ancient centralized political framework claiming descent from King Solomon. The institutions were gone, the military was shattered, and his own father had actually died a fugitive.
So he starts with guerrilla warfare in the mountains, which, is about leveraging that harsh terrain to neutralize a larger occupying force, striking supply lines, and then melting back into the cliffs. But terrain only gets you so far against a fully entrenched occupation.
Yeah, to actually break the Adelaide occupation, Gelawdewos had to escalate. He essentially entered into a massive geopolitical proxy war between global superpowers.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, he aligned with the Portuguese Empire, who brought in advanced matchlock firearms. And then Imam Ahmad, countered by calling in the Ottoman Empire, who brought devastating artillery and hundreds of their own matchlockmen.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge the strategy, though. This feels like throwing gasoline on that mansion fire. I mean, relying on Portuguese mercenaries seems incredibly short-sighted. You're basically inviting foreign empires to carve up your land. Surely there was a native coalition he could have built instead.
Well, you'd think so, but remember, his native institutions were entirely gone. It was just sheer desperation.
Yeah, I see.
And initially, your skepticism is totally validated. At the Battle of Wayna, the Portuguese were crushed, and their commander was actually beheaded.
Oh my gosh.
But Gelawdewos managed to rally the survivors with his remaining indigenous forces. And this leads to the 1543 Battle of Wayna Daga. The entire war turns on a single moment.
What happens?
A lone Portuguese musketeer breaks formation, charges, and shoots Imam Ahmad right in the chest.
Wow. And since 16th century armies relied so heavily on the personal charisma of their leader, the Adalite command structure just instantly evaporates without him.
Right. But winning the physical war immediately triggers a completely different threat from his so-called saviors. The Portuguese didn't just pack up and leave.
Of course not.
No, they stayed, and they brought Jesuit missionaries who demanded Ethiopia convert to Roman Catholicism and drop indigenous practices like observing the Saturday Sabbath and male circumcision.
But if Gelawdewos refuses, he risks losing his only military lifeline.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he drafts his confession of faith. His brilliance here is the legal framing. He argues that Ethiopian circumcision wasn't a heretical religious requirement, but just a localized cultural practice. He explicitly compares it to people in Nubia getting facial tattoos.
That is a fascinating way to handle an ultimatum. He just strips the practice of its theological weight. For you listening, think about how often we conflate our core values with mere habits. Gelawdewos literally saved his culture by separating the uncompromisable theology from, flexible local customs.
Yeah.
He tells the Jesuits, we have the same Christian theology. These are just cultural quirks.
Yeah, and he diffused the threat without firing a single shot. And he coupled that external defense with internal healing. Like in 1548, he passed a massive edict banning the enslavement of freeborn Christians.
Which stops the demographic bleeding into foreign slave markets. That's critical for a traumatized population trying to rebuild its identity.
It really is. It's brilliant statecraft. But even brilliant statecraft gets ground down by a century of relentless warfare. Yeah, we can't skip over the fact that a decade later, the region is still incredibly unstable. I mean, by 1559, at the Battle of Fatagar, he's facing Emir Nur, who had sworn a vow of vengeance for Imam Ahmad.
And it ends in tragedy. Before the battle, a terrifying prophecy circulates that an angel foretold Gelawdewos' death.
Oh, that's devastating for morale.
Totally. This psychological blow causes mass panic, and much of his army just flees. Gelawdewos fights a ferocious last stand, but he is surrounded, killed, and gruesomely beheaded.
The historiographical aftermath is wild, though. The Ethiopian Royal Chronicle deliberately erased the Portuguese military contribution from their records. They rebuilt the mansion, but painted over the scorch marks to pretend the fire and the foreign firefighters never existed.
Right, all to maintain a narrative of divine Ethiopian exceptionalism. It was a necessary fiction for a recovering state.
Yeah.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the truly unstoppable force of this era wasn't any army at all.
Wait, what was it?
During Gelawdewos' reign, the Great Oromo migrations began. This was a massive, decentralized wave of pastoralists moving into the empire.
Basically a demographic shift that no centralized military strategy, whether Ottoman or Portuguese, could halt.
Exactly. Which leaves you with an important question to mull over. In the grand sweep of history, do kings, armies, and brilliant legal maneuvers truly dictate the future?
Or do demographics and the unstoppable movement of everyday people ultimately reshape the ground the mansion is built on?